Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Ready to explore another fascinating topic with me?
Always excited to dive in. What are we tackling today?
Well, today we're going to be looking at self-driven growth.
Okay.
And specifically, we're going to be taking a deep dive into a Chinese parenting book called
Oh, wow.
Self-Driven Growth.
Interesting.
And this book offers, I think, some really surprising insights that honestly, I think apply whether you're a parent or an educator or even just someone who's, interested in just personal development.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how the book kind of blends these cultural perspectives with some pretty cutting edge research on, motivation.
Yeah, and I think what really hooked me right from the start was how it challenges this whole idea of like cannot lose at the starting line,
Right.
which I feel like you see in so many like high achieving cultures.
Yeah, it's that whole like succeed at all costs mentality where it's
Yeah.
like everything is just completely geared towards like reaching these very specific goals,
Right.
perfect grades and prestigious colleges.
Right. Totally. And the book argues that this approach that it calls the challenge effort model,
Okay.
it can actually backfire.
Hmm.
You end up with all this external pressure,
Yeah.
but not a lot in the way of like internal drive.
Right, like it becomes a push harder or give up scenario?
Totally. And it's not even just a cultural thing, right? I mean, you see this pressure in like all sorts of different environments.
Absolutely.
Like whether it's sports or academics or, even the workplace.
Exactly.
So what does this book offer as like a different approach?
Well, they introduced this really fascinating concept called the pressure control model.
Okay.
And it starts by acknowledging that pressure itself isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Oh,
In fact, it's essential for growth.
wait, so we're supposed to be adding more pressure? I thought the goal was to like ease up on kids.
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
It's not about just piling on more pressure, it's about understanding how these different types of pressure affect us.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
All right, well, think about it like this. You know how like a little pregame nervousness can actually help an athlete perform better?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I've definitely experienced that.
Right.
Sometimes a little bit of stress can actually sharpen your focus.
Exactly. And the book actually digs into the science behind all that. It's
Right.
like this positive pressure, like those pre-performance jitters you were talking about,
Yeah.
that triggers the release of adrenaline,
Okay.
which can actually boost performance.
Mhm.
But here's the key. It has to be the right kind of pressure.
Oh, so what are the wrong kinds of pressure?
Well, the book talks about three types:
Okay.
positive, tolerable, and toxic.
Okay.
Positive pressure is that sort of short-term manageable stress
Yeah.
that can enhance performance.
Well.
Tolerable pressure, like dealing with a stressful event,
Mm-hmm.
can lead to resilience, especially with the right support.
But it's that toxic pressure, like that chronic, unrelenting stress that's the real problem, right?
Exactly. And this is where the book's insights into neuroscience become like really relevant.
Yeah.
They cite studies from the National Scientific Council on the Developing Child about the impact of hormones like cortisol.
So if I'm remembering correctly, cortisol is like the stress hormone, right?
Precisely.
Yeah, okay.
And in small doses, it's essential for survival.
Right.
But when we're constantly stressed,
Yeah.
our cortisol levels just stay elevated.
Yeah.
And that's where things get a little tricky, especially for kids.
What kind of impact does that have?
Well, have you ever noticed how, like, when you're super stressed, you can't seem to remember things or think clearly?
Oh, absolutely. My brain basically turns to mush under pressure.
Right. That's cortisol at work.
No.
It can actually impair memory and learning.
Hmm.
So for kids who are constantly under pressure to perform that crazy, that chronic stress can really hinder their development.
Wow, that's a really important point.
And that's where the control part of the pressure control model comes in.
Okay.
It's not about eliminating pressure altogether. It's about recognizing the pressure is inevitable. But it's how we manage it, how we give kids the tools to navigate it that really makes all the difference.
Okay, so control in this context isn't about like being controlling, right?
Right. It's not about micromanaging every decision. It's about giving kids agency within safe boundaries.
Okay.
The book actually highlights this fascinating study where they found that even the illusion of control can reduce anxiety in a stressful situation.
Really?
Like just having a button to press, even if it doesn't actually do anything, can make people feel less stressed.
That's wild. So even if they're not actually in control, just the perception of control can make a difference.
Exactly. And they relate this to everyday examples like why some people prefer driving to flying.
Oh, because even though flying is statistically safer, you feel more in control when you're driving.
Right. It's about that sense of agency of being in the driver's seat,
Yeah.
which can have a huge impact on how we experience stress.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So how does this apply to parenting, though?
Okay.
Are we talking about like letting kids make all their own decisions?
Well, not exactly. The book emphasizes that it's not about making the best choice every time.
Right.
It's about giving kids the opportunity to make choices, to learn from those choices, and to really develop their own decision-making skills.
So it's more about the process than the outcome.
Exactly. They outline 3 steps to giving kids effective control.
Okay.
The first is shielding them from choices that they're not developmentally ready for.
Okay.
Like pushing a 5-year-old to choose their career path is probably going to create more anxiety than empowerment.
Right. Like they don't even know what they want for lunch most days.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
The second step is letting them make age-appropriate decisions, even if those decisions aren't perfect.
So even if it means they wear mismatched socks to school or choose a book that they end up not liking.
Exactly. It's about letting them experiment, make mistakes, and learn from experience.
Okay. And the third step.
Allowing them to experience the natural consequences of their choices without rescuing them.
Okay, that's the one that always makes me nervous.
I know.
It's tough to watch your kids struggle.
I know it goes against every instinct,
Yeah.
but the book really emphasizes that it's not about letting them make dangerous decisions.
Okay.
It's about creating a safe environment where they can experience the natural consequences of their actions,
Okay.
whether it's, forgetting their homework or choosing to spend their allowance on something they later regret.
So it's about letting them learn those valuable life lessons early on.
Exactly. And it's about building resilience, that ability to bounce back from setbacks.
Which, let's be honest, is a skill we all need throughout life.
Absolutely. So we've talked about pressure and control, but what about motivation itself?
Yeah.
Like, how do we cultivate that inner drive, that desire to learn and grow for the sheer joy of it?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is, and that's where things get really interesting. The book delves into the psychology of intrinsic motivation, drawing on some fascinating research.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about this.
All right, well, let's dive in.
So you're saying, like, instead of relying on all those, like, external rewards,
Yeah.
like gold stars and pizza parties,
Yeah, right.
we should be focusing on nurturing this, like, intrinsic motivation.
Exactly. The book actually dives into the work of psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan
Okay.
and their self-determination theory.
Okay.
And they identified these 3 psychological needs that are really crucial for fostering intrinsic motivation:
Okay.
autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
Okay. So let's break those down. Autonomy, we've kind of already touched on a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like that sense of control, that feeling of having a choice in what you do.
Exactly. When kids feel like they have a say in their actions,
Yeah.
they're more likely to be intrinsically motivated. It's not something they're doing because they have to,
Right.
but because they want to.
So even like small choices like letting them pick which book to read or how they want to approach a project can make a difference.
Absolutely. It's about fostering that sense of ownership,
Yeah.
that feeling that their efforts are self-directed.
And what about competence? How do we help kids feel like they're, capable and making progress?
This is where it's important to provide opportunities for them to experience success, but also to learn from their mistakes.
Right.
It's not about shielding them from challenges,
Yeah.
but about providing the right level of support so they can navigate those challenges and really build their confidence.
So instead of like jumping in to solve every problem for them, we kind of step back and let them figure things out, offering guidance when needed.
Exactly. We become facilitators rather than fixers.
Okay.
And we celebrate their effort and progress, not just the end result.
Yeah.
This helps them to develop a growth mindset where they see challenges as opportunities to learn and improve.
And that makes total sense because in the real world, you don't always succeed on the first try.
Right.
It's about learning from your mistakes and persevering.
Exactly. And that brings us to the third need, relatedness. Have you ever noticed that you're more motivated to do something when you feel connected to the people involved
Oh, yeah.
or the purpose behind it?
Totally. Think about those classes in school where you really connected with the teacher
Right.
and your classmates. You were way more engaged, even if the subject matter wasn't your favorite.
Exactly. That sense of connection of belonging is so crucial for motivation.
Yeah.
It fuels that desire to contribute, to be a part of something bigger than yourself.
So how do we create that sense of relatedness in a learning environment?
It's about fostering positive relationships between teachers and students, as well as among peers.
Okay.
It's about creating a supportive community where kids feel valued, respected, and heard.
So it goes beyond just like the academics.
Yeah,
It's about creating a learning environment that nourishes their emotional and social well-being as well.
precisely. And the book gives this great example of how to respond to a child's disappointing test score
Okay.
while nurturing all three of these needs.
Okay.
Let's say your child comes home with a less than stellar math test.
Ugh, yeah, that's always a tough situation.
Damn.
My instinct is to go into like fix-it mode.
I get it, but instead of focusing on the grade itself,
Yeah.
try acknowledging their effort, offering support, and giving them choices in how they want to approach improvement.
So instead of saying, you need to study harder, I could say something like, hey, I know you're disappointed with this score and I see how hard you've been working.
Yeah.
If you're open to it, we can brainstorm some different ways to study for the next one.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Exactly. That response acknowledges their feelings.
Okay.
Relatedness offers support competence and gives them a choice in how to move forward autonomy.
Right.
It's such a subtle shift, but it can make a world of difference in how they approach the situation.
It's about empowering them to take ownership of their learning rather than feeling like they're being controlled or punished.
Precisely. And it's not just about helping kids ace tests or get into the right college. It's
Yeah.
about equipping them with the skills and mindset to be lifelong learners,
Right.
driven by their own curiosity and passions.
Because let's face it, the world is changing so rapidly. Right. The specific knowledge they learn today might be obsolete in a few years. What they really need are those adaptable learning skills
Yeah.
and that internal drive to keep growing.
Absolutely. And that brings us back to the book's emphasis on moving away from external rewards as the primary motivator.
Right.
Because, those gold stars and pizza parties only go so far.
They might work in the short term,
Yeah.
but they don't really foster that deep intrinsic motivation
Right.
that will carry them through challenges and setbacks.
It's like those video games that keep you hooked with points and achievements.
Yeah.
Fun for a while.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily translate to a genuine interest in the activity itself.
And when the rewards disappear or the task becomes too challenging,
Right.
the motivation often fades away.
Exactly. So the key is to help kids connect their learning to those three psychological needs we discussed.
Okay.
Autonomy, competence, and relatedness.
Yeah.
When those needs are met,
Yeah.
they're more likely to see learning as an enjoyable and rewarding experience in itself.
So it's about creating an environment where they feel like they have a voice.
Yes,
They feel capable and they feel connected to something bigger than themselves.
precisely. And this approach, as the book argues, isn't limited to parenting or education.
Okay.
It offers valuable insights into human motivation and growth in any context.
So whether we're leading a team, pursuing a personal goal, or simply navigating the ups and downs of life, these principles can be applied to boost our own motivation and support the growth of those around us.
Absolutely. Think about the areas in your own Obian life where you might be relying too heavily on external pressure or rewards.
Yeah.
Could you shift your focus to cultivate a greater sense of autonomy, competence, and relatedness?
It's a challenge to rethink those ingrained patterns, but the potential rewards are significant.
And remember, it's not about perfection.
Right.
It's about embracing the journey of growth with all its twists and turns.
This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about. We've explored this fascinating pressure control model, delved into the importance of managing pressure, providing effective control, and nurturing intrinsic motivation.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is. But what does this all mean for you listening right now? We've talked about it a lot, but it really all comes down to, like, how can you listening right now apply these principles to your own life?
Right.
Like whether you're raising kids or mentoring someone or even just working on your own personal growth.
Yeah, I think what's so powerful about this model is that it gives us this framework for understanding motivation. It beyond just those like surface level tips and tricks.
Right.
It encourages us to really think about like the deeper psychological needs that
Yeah.
drive our actions.
And it reminds us that growth isn't always this like linear process, right?
Right,
It's
yeah.
messy, it's unpredictable, and it often involves setbacks.
And that's where I think the concept of control becomes so important.
Okay.
It's not about like trying to control every outcome. It's
Yeah.
about giving yourself or the people you're supporting the tools
Yeah.
to navigate those challenges and make choices that align with their values and goals.
So I'm curious what resonated with you most from this book. Was it like a particular insight or strategy that you found especially helpful?
Honestly, what really struck me was how this model encourages a shift in perspective.
Okay.
It's not about forcing ourselves or others to fit into this like predefined mold of success.
Right.
It's about creating an environment where everyone feels empowered to like pursue their own unique path of growth.
I love that. And it really ties back to those 3 psychological needs we discussed: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Like
Yeah,
when those needs are met, people are more likely to be intrinsically motivated,
right.
resilient, and engaged in that process of growth,
Totally.
whether it's in their personal lives, their work, or their relationships.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that growth isn't just about achieving specific goals. It's
Wow.
about cultivating this mindset of curiosity, exploration, and continuous learning.
And that's something we can all benefit from,
Oh, yeah.
regardless of our age, background, or
I
aspirations.
think so.
So as you reflect on this deep dive today, think about an area in your life where you could apply these principles. Maybe it's a personal project you've been putting off, a relationship that needs a little nurturing, or even just a new skill you'd like to learn.
Yeah. Any of those.
How could you approach this challenge with a greater sense of autonomy, competence, and relatedness?
That's a good question.
What small steps could you take today to move towards that goal?
Yeah, just start small.
Right.
Remember, it's not about making like drastic changes overnight.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the journey, celebrating the small wins, and learning from those inevitable setbacks along the way.
We've only just scratched the surface of this book,
Right.
but hopefully this deep dive has given you some food for thought and some practical tools to foster self-driven growth
Yeah,
in your own life and the lives of those around you.
I think so.
If you're intrigued by what we've discussed today, we highly encourage you to check out the book, Self-Driven Growth. It's packed with even more insights and real-world examples that we didn't have time to cover.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating read.
And as always, we love hearing from you.
Yeah.
If this deep dive sparked any aha moments or new ideas, share them with us on social media or in the comments section.
We'd love to hear from you.
Until next time,
Yeah.
keep that curiosity burning and keep diving deep.
See you next time.